Hello, everyone. I am excited to hang out with you today and talk about the 5 questions that you need to ask if you're not getting interviews after applying to jobs. So, we are going to talk about these 5 questions. They're really, really actionable and ideally are going to lead to specific things you can do or go evaluate different parts of your job search, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, all kinds of things. So if you are applying to jobs right now and not getting interviews, then you definitely want to stick around for this. And if you have friends who might be in that situation, then you might want to invite them to this. I have a few little slides that we are going to go over with these questions so that you can screenshot it and to remember them later. But before we get started, I'm really curious to hear a little bit more about you, where you are tuning in from, and are you currently applying to jobs right now? If so, how is that going? Um, if you are tuning in on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, because through the miracle of technology, we're in all those places at once. But if you are tuning in from those places, I can see all of your comments. So don't be shy. Let me know. Are you currently applying to jobs right now? And if so, how is that going? Because based on a lot of conversations I've had with people, specifically in user experience and tech and product, but this honestly applies to really anyone in their job search. This idea of applying to a lot of roles and not getting interviews seems to be a theme that is coming up quite a bit. And I really want to hopefully put a stop to that for you, because if you are applying to jobs and not getting interviews, that is a giant red flag that something is wrong. And I think a lot of you might know that subconsciously, but you don't know what to do about it. So instead of slowing down to figure out what the problem is, you just keep applying and kind of playing the numbers game and hoping that next time you apply, things will be different. But if you're not changing anything about your job search strategy, about the jobs you're applying to, about your resume, about your LinkedIn profile, etc. If you're not paying attention to that stuff and you're only just applying to more jobs and more jobs and more jobs and more jobs, the odds are that you're not going to get a different result, right? It's like that Einstein quote, and I forget how exactly it goes, but it's something to the effect of, if you keep doing the same thing over and over, and you're not getting different results, that's the definition of insanity, right? So that is what we want to talk about today. Getting you off the applying to jobs but not getting interviews hamster wheel so you can actually start to get more interviews. Now, in case we haven't met yet, I want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Sarah Doody. I am the founder and CEO of Career Strategy Lab, which is a UX career accelerator for people who work in user experience, product development, tech, those areas. And you can think of us like an incubator for startups, but we're incubating your job search and your career. So I'll tell you more about that in a little bit, but I want to just read some of your comments here to get a sense of who you are and where you're from. So it sounds like a lot of you are in this situation where you're applying to jobs and not getting interviews. Let's see. Okay, Julianne from Austin is saying kind of what we're talking about. This is happening to you. Sarah from San Francisco, applying to research jobs and not getting interviews. You think it's due to a lack of experience, but it could be due to some other things. So hopefully you might be able to identify some quick changes you can make. Rich has been applying, not getting interviews. Also, I just hope from hearing and reading everyone else's comments that you are realizing, oh, this is not just me. I'm not the only one. Because I think when you get into this cycle of applying to jobs and not getting interviews, the imposter syndrome and the doubt starts to creep in, right? So hopefully by seeing the comments, you're realizing, okay, this is not just me. And it will give you some calm, hopefully reduce some of the anxiety or negative thoughts, because this is not just you. Okay, see some familiar faces. Eric from Honolulu, and saying the same thing. You're not applying yet, but you're looking for other researchers. Awesome. Okay. Let's see. All right. So I want to share my screen really quick. Now I need to remember how to do that. Let me click the button. All right. It worked. All right. So you're applying to jobs and you aren't getting job offers or job interviews, right? You're not advancing to that next stage. That's what we're going to talk about here. And actually, I have more than 5 questions. I think I have like 8 questions that you can ask yourself to kind of audit or evaluate what you are doing in your applying to jobs and job interviews. But I briefly mentioned this thing I run called Career Strategy Lab. It is a program that walks you through everything related to finishing your resume, your portfolio, your LinkedIn, networking, preparing for job interviews, etc. We walk you through how to do all that with tons of detailed templates, tutorials, critiques, office hours, a community, all kinds of things. And people that have worked with us are able to stop playing the numbers game. And this is really important because some of you have either applied to 100 and more jobs or you see these posts all the time, right? And our goal is that you get hired without applying to hundreds of jobs. So these are just 2 people. Fee got hired after applying to only 35 jobs, which is pretty awesome. And then Tessa got hired after just applying to 11 jobs, which is amazing. Previously, Tessa had applied to 400 jobs and only had 4 interviews. So we know what we're talking about. And people that have worked with us have been hired at all kinds of companies around the world. A couple of them that are missing there, Blue Origin, someone just got hired there, IBM, Intel, a bunch of others. But I want to jump to this challenge of applying to jobs and not getting interviews. So what do? So if we think of the job search, there's really 3 steps or checkpoints in the job search where I think it's really, really valuable to intentionally hit pause and check in and really figure out, are things going well? Or do I need to go and revisit maybe the way I interview or my resume? So thinking about this kind of little journey of the job search, we have applying to jobs, then we have that initial screening or whatever you want to call it. Then you might proceed to more interviews and then you're going to get hired. So today we're just focusing on this step in between applying to jobs and getting that initial screening interview. So want you to keep in mind, but honestly, some of these questions could apply to other steps as well. So I'm going to, I gotta do something here. Play in window. That's what I want to do. And then I want to move this over here. All right. So we want to go to the next slide here because I didn't want to show you all the questions at once. I want to go one by one here. So the first question that you could ask yourself if you are applying to jobs and not getting interviews. First question, let's see if this works. Yes. All right. Question number 1. Did I actually read the entire job description before I applied? Some of you might be rolling your eyes at this question, but I'm including it because I know some of you are guilty of applying to jobs without reading the job description. Now, I know many of you are saying, well, why should I bother reading the job description? I know job descriptions are often really crappy or redundant or inaccurate, etc. I really believe there's no excuse to not read the job description. You can't just rely on the job title alone because job titles mean many different things at many different companies. The other reason it is so important to read the entire job description is something we'll get to in some of the other questions. But if you have not read the job description, then you will not be equipped with the information you need to customize or tailor your resume to the job you're applying to, or tailor or customize, say, a cover letter to the job you're applying to. And I forgot to mention that in addition to helping you guys with your job search in Career Strategy Lab, we also do UX recruiting. So I can tell you that we've reviewed hundreds of applications, etc. And we see a lot of these mistakes where it's very clear that someone did not read the job description and frankly shouldn't have even applied to the role to begin with, but they probably only read the job title and thought, oh, I'm going to click apply and play the numbers game. So let's move on to the next question, which is, if I am honest with myself, because I actually read the job description, do I match 60% of the requirements for the jobs I applied to? Now, yes, this is subjective. 60% is a number that I made up, but I feel like it's a good number to stick with for our discussion. I think a lot of people, there's kind of two camps, let's say. Camp number one is a lot of you think, and let me know in the chat, but a lot of you really think that you cannot apply to a job unless you match all of the things on the job description. How many of you might believe that or have thought that in the past? Because that's untrue. All right. So a lot of you think that you need to match every single thing related to the job description. And that's just not true, because job descriptions, in my opinion, are really they're wish lists. They are not something where the company is truly expecting you're going to match every single thing. There are nice to haves in there. So you want to give yourself permission to apply to jobs that you might only meet 60%. On the flip side, if you only meet, 10% of the requirements on a job description, then it's highly possible you are just not getting interviews because you are coming across as completely unqualified for the job. So I know some of these might seem basic, but I want to get them out of the way in the beginning because, like I said, I do recruiting and I see a lot of people make these mistakes. So let's move on to the next one, which is, whoops, gotta go here, which is this. Am I truly proud of and confident in my key career materials? So by career materials, I mean three core things: your resume, your LinkedIn profile, and examples of your work, a presentation, a portfolio. I don't care what we call it, but oftentimes when you apply for jobs, there's the opportunity to include materials, portfolio, examples of work, etc. And so I would really ask yourself, if you're not getting interviews and job offers, or specifically interviews for the purposes of this video, how confident are you in your materials? A lot of you are applying with materials that, frankly, you're not confident in, and you know it, and you're just not sure what to do about it. And it's almost like it is easier to keep applying than do the hard work of trying to figure out, how could I improve my resume? How could I improve my LinkedIn? How could I improve my portfolio? And one really important thing to think about is, if you're not confident in what is literally on your resume, or the bullet points, in your LinkedIn work history or your portfolio, if you're not confident in those things, then guess what's going to happen down the road if you get job interviews? You're probably not going to do well in job interviews because you are not confident in what you've written about, the jobs you've held in the past. And what's the purpose of a job interview? It's kind of to talk about what's on your resume and in your LinkedIn and in your portfolio, right? Like, obviously, we're not going line item by line item, but the nature of the things that you talk about in an interview are likely going to touch on things that are on your resume, etc. So if you're not confident in those materials, it's kind of an opportunity to save yourself kind of a heartache down the road when it comes to interviews, and do the work now to improve your resume, your LinkedIn profile, etc. All right, next question you need to ask yourself is, did I customize my resume, portfolio, presentation, whatever you call it? Did I customize those things when I applied to the job? This is critical. And I know a lot of you are going to say, well, how do I do that? It's going to take up too much time. I don't have the energy to customize my resume for every job you apply to. So when I say customize your resume or portfolio, I'm not talking about rewriting every single word on it. What I mean is, because you're a smart candidate and you read the job description, there are probably going to be things on the job description that jump out to you, and you're going to think to yourself, I'm really good at that. Or my job now really is a good example of this thing they have on the job description for the job I want. So, what you want to do with your resume or your portfolio, obviously, it's hard to customize your LinkedIn profile because it's a web page. You can't make a different version for every job you apply to, but you can, if you choose to, for your resume and your portfolio. So simple things like rearranging the order of bullet points on your resume can help move those more relevant bullet points or examples up to the top. With your portfolio, you might be changing the order of projects in your portfolio. So you might move the second project to really be the first project, because that second project is really, really relevant to the job you're applying to. Other things on your resume, you could customize, if you have a little about me statement or overview statement at the top of your resume, you might be customizing that for the jobs you are applying to. And these changes, we're talking like 10 minutes. It's not 8-hour marathon resume redesign session every time you apply to a job. That would be ridiculous. So hopefully you guys see how easy it is to customize your resume or your portfolio. And, if you work in user experience or product development, you know that when we are designing experiences, we are trying to personalize it, right? When I log into my bank or my Peloton dashboard, it's a lot better when it's personalized and it is more related to me. So think of the user of your resume or your portfolio. If you're applying to a job at a healthcare company and you have previous healthcare experience, you really want to maybe highlight that in the little about me statement at the top of your resume, for example. All right, let's move on here. The next question is, did I rush to finish my resume or portfolio before I applied? I'm guessing a lot of you would say yes to this. And I really, really encourage you to not do this. It's a better use of your time to stop applying to jobs and invest the time to get your materials in a place that you're confident and that they don't have mistakes, because you only have one first impression when you apply to companies, right? So if you're rushing, what happens when you rush? You make spelling mistakes, you get sloppy with kind of how you write and then how you lay things out. And that doesn't create a great first impression. So don't rush things. And the way to not rush things is to do it right the first time or going forward from today, so that in the future you have a really solid kind of base version of your resume or portfolio that you can use, and you're not just starting from the ground up, every time it's time to look for a new job, or you see an interesting job you want to apply to. All right, next question. Did I write a cover letter or reach out by email to highlight why I'd be awesome for this role and sell myself? Now, I know a lot of you think to yourself, I hate networking. I'm not good at networking. Networking is gross, whatever. And you also might be thinking, no one reads cover letters. That's so like 1972. This is ridiculous. Total waste of my time. I'm not going to do it. And I have talked to a lot of hiring managers and people involved in this process, and many of them have said that cover letters are useful because you can kind of think about it like a movie trailer, and then your actual application and resume, etc., is the actual movie. But put yourself in their shoes. They're super busy, and if you write a cover letter that summarizes you as a candidate and the relevant experience to the role, that might help save them time, because they don't have to skim through your whole resume, for example. They can just quickly read this cover letter and learn a ton about you. So the other thing to think about is, because I know you're thinking, I don't have time to write cover letters. Well, guess what? If you have a really good kind of base cover letter or template, for lack of a better word, that you're using to then just add a sentence or two here and there for every job you apply to, you can get that cover letter out in like 10 minutes tops. So put yourself in their shoes. They are going to appreciate a cover letter. I don't think anyone's going to say, oh, I'm not looking at this candidate, they included a cover letter. It's not as though it's going to do you any harm, but I think kind of the time investment to create it and the potential for it to help you stand out, that is worth it. So make sure you do that if that's an option, for how you apply for that job. The next question is, did I follow up after I applied for the job? Now, yes, you cannot always follow up because you may not know the email address or contact information. Like if you applied through their website and it's going into like Workday or some big job software thing, you might just get an auto email back that doesn't give you the option to reply and talk to a person, right? That's reality. But a lot of jobs, maybe you've seen this on LinkedIn. A lot of people are posting on LinkedIn posts that sound like, hey, my team is hiring for this, that, the other job. Here's the link to apply. Let me know if you're interested, or feel free to ask questions. If you've applied to a job where someone posted about it, or the person who is hiring, or someone on the team, I don't believe it can do any harm to follow up after you applied. The key is what you say in that follow-up email. You don't want to seem nagging or annoying, or just saying like, hey, did you get my application? Or kind of a yes, no question. The way that you're going to get people to hopefully reply and maybe stay engaged in a conversation is if you ask them a question. So something like, hey, I saw the job you posted on LinkedIn. I applied and I have a question, and keep that question super, super short. It could be a question about the company, whether it's remote or not, how big the team is, who knows? But when you include a question in your kind of follow up email, you're more likely to receive a reply. But the key is, don't tell them your whole life story and how like your childhood equipped you to do this job they're hiring for, because they don't have time for that. And I can tell you, when I see those emails come to my LinkedIn or my email, um, it's just like overwhelm. I do not have time or energy to read messages that are like 1,000 words long or longer about your whole life history. And then, like, maybe there's a question or there's a vague, like, can we have a call to pick your brain at the end? I'm like, no. So make sure you follow up and do it in a really thoughtful, intentional way. Um, and next one is, did I try to connect with a person at the company, which is kind of what we just talked about. But I would say, even if you applied for a job and you didn't see someone on LinkedIn say, hey, my team is hiring, blah, blah, blah. Let's say you don't know anyone at the company. LinkedIn could still be a very useful tool for you. You could go on LinkedIn and try and find people who work at that company and try and start a conversation with them. But everything I just said still applies. You don't want to seem like a nag, or that you're saying to them, hey, I applied. Do you think you could pull some strings for me? I really want to work there. That just seems like a little icky to me. But if you treat it as like, I'm going to find a person who works at that company so I can learn more about that company and be better informed about, do I really want to work there, you know? So again, you could ask them things like, hey, I noticed you've been at the company for 2 years. What do you like about working there? You could ask them questions about the size of the team. Who knows? But the key is to keep it specific, and don't be kind of that sleazy person that slides into the DMs and just says, hey, can you help me get a job at the company? I really love that company, or something. That just, it's gross, basically, in my opinion, professionally gross. But if you keep it professional, ask thoughtful questions that are short, people may be more likely to reply to your questions or your cold emails or cold LinkedIn messages. So if you're applying to jobs and not getting interviews, hopefully now you have a few of these questions that you think, oh, yeah, I really need to go back and do X, Y, and Z things. I think one of the best places that you can start, though, is your resume and your LinkedIn profile, because when you apply to the job, what are people doing? They're perusing through, more than likely, your LinkedIn, your resume, and maybe your portfolio if you included that, right? And then, of course, answers if there was an application with kind of fill in the blank type answers and stuff. But if you're applying to jobs and not getting interviews, I think resume and LinkedIn and portfolio are great places to start. And we don't have time to go into the nitty gritty of how to write effective resumes and portfolios and LinkedIn profiles and all that. But one of the big mistakes I see most people make is that they write what they did and then they just leave it at that, right? Oftentimes, resumes sound like job descriptions where it says, I was responsible for this. I made wireframes. I made user flows. I created personas. And it's like, okay, what does that mean? Like, what specifically did you do, right? I did user research. What type of research? How big was the research project? What was the research for? How did you do it? What did you learn? What happened? And so, as you're looking at your resume, just let's isolate resume. As you're looking at your resume, ask yourself, did I just tell people what I did? Or did I give examples of what I did? And did I explain how I did it? If you just do that, you're going to be able to take your resume or any other thing, your portfolio, your LinkedIn profile, even your cover letters, you're going to take that up a notch and help people really see the depth and breadth of your skills. Because if it's down to, you and some other applicant that they're deciding, should we offer, Bob or Sally an interview, and Sally just says, I made wireframes, I did user research, but Bob says, I was responsible for doing research for, the e-com or the checkout part of the product, and I did usability testing and qualitative research with like 500 people or something. That's getting into the detail that people want to know about. So hopefully by now, if you're applying to jobs and not getting interviews, you have some really, really actionable stuff that you can do. Due to some technical issues with Restream, I can't see your comments today, which is so annoying. So I'm actually going to see if I can go over to YouTube and see if there are any comments there. We might get some feedback as, let me mute myself. Okay. Now I'm on YouTube watching myself, but I want to see if there's any questions here that maybe, all right. I don't see many questions on YouTube live chat. Oh, wait. All right. I'm going to go to LinkedIn though. This is not a good user experience for me right now, but I want to see if there's any questions on LinkedIn that might be worth answering here. So let me find my live stream on LinkedIn, and I got to mute myself. Okay, I'm muted. Okay, I see all your questions here. So, questions and comments. Okay. Rich asked, what is the key thing to convey in a cover letter? What information am I offering? It's not on the tailored resume. I'm not sure when you exactly asked that question, but I use that example of movie trailer and movie. And a good kind of litmus test, Rich, is if someone only read your cover letter, what would they know about you? Like, would that potentially pique their interest enough to then, flip the page or open your resume on their computer or something? I know that's a little subjective, but it shouldn't just be like bullet points from your resume. What you want to be doing is really connecting the dots between the role that they're hiring for and any kind of glaring, obvious, awesome experience that you have that you think, wow, if I could only tell them like 2 or 3 things about me, these are the things they need to know. So hopefully that helps you, Rich. Let's see. I want to see what other questions there are. Someone said some job descriptions have requirements and nice to haves. Does shooting for 60% to requirements, or is a combination of the two? This is where it gets a little subjective. And I mean, I really just did make up the 60% number. It kind of felt good to me. I realize that's not data driven, but what I hope you're taking away is that you don't need to meet 100%, but don't like shoot yourself in the foot and apply if you have one, meet one of the requirements, because that's frankly just a waste of your time. But I think, Sarah, like, see between the requirements and nice to haves, aim for like 60 if you want a number to shoot for. You said it's about keyword matching to customize the resume, right? So when it comes to resumes in Career Strategy Lab, what we teach is that you need 2 versions of your resume. And we don't have time to go into all of that totally today, but you need to have an applicant tracking system version and a human version of your resume. And there are times, like if you've been messaging with someone on LinkedIn and they say, send me your resume, you would send the human version of the resume. If you know you're probably submitting your application or resume to like a big job board or a company's job software thing, you want to send that applicant tracking system version. Now, the content is a little different in both of those, but one of the more important things is the design, because those applicant tracking systems don't like it when you have a resume that's multiple columns. Whereas for a human, reading a 2-column resume is a lot easier. And I literally just talked about this like 90 minutes ago on a podcast interview where we were discussing the 2 types of resumes. And the person interviewing me said, yeah, like a single page resume, as a person reading the resume, there's data that we know that says smaller width columns are easier for the eye to skim, scan, etc. So, Sarah, that is and all I can share with you about that, just given time and things like that. Rich said, how long should a cover letter be? I mean, I don't have a word count, but I'm thinking like 2, 3 small paragraphs. And by small paragraphs, I mean maybe like 1 to 3 sentences in each paragraph. Like if I really had to boil it down, it might be the length of like 5 tweets or something like that. You don't want it to take up the entire, literal 1-page Google Doc. I think like a quarter or a third of a page of a Google Doc if you want to try and get specific. But remember, it's a trailer and they're not going to read like an entire page. So let's keep it short and let's make it readable by not having it be like a giant, what I call a wall of text, where you have a paragraph that's 15 lines long with no spaces in between. You want to have 2 or 3 little paragraph chunks that are going to be easier for someone to read. We will have to do another video someday with visuals for that, but hopefully that helps. All right, everyone, this has been fun. We don't have time really to go into any more details. I know you want to know, how do I write a resume? How do I design a resume, etc. But today was all about how do we address the problem of applying to jobs and not getting interviews, because I don't want that to be your reality anymore. And it doesn't have to be, because like I said, when people in our program, Career Strategy Lab, apply what we teach, apply strategy to their job search, don't just play the numbers game, consider the user for their resume, for their portfolio, for the LinkedIn, etc., they're able to get hired without applying to hundreds of jobs, and they really break this cycle. And these are just 2 stories of people that experienced this, where they got hired with only applying to, like I said, 35 jobs for fee. And Fee's job search only took 4 weeks, which was awesome. And then Tessa, she was the one that had applied to 400 jobs previously and ended up getting hired after applying to 11 jobs. And the whole process for her took about 23 days, which is amazing. So it totally is possible. And we see testimonials like this all the time from people. If you're curious about Career Strategy Lab or want to learn more, just go to careerstrategylab.com. We let new people into it kind of on a rolling basis as other people leave the program. We do have a few spots available right now. And to apply or to get in, you have to apply. So there's an application, and take that seriously, because if you just put 1-word answers, that tells us like we're not really interested. So we take this really seriously, and we want you guys to as well. But thank you all for joining. This has been fun, and I hope that now your perspective on playing the numbers game maybe has been shifted to realize, you know what, I'm going to invest the time and energy now to course correct things and do small kind of high value things, like including a cover letter, tailoring your resume, tailoring your portfolio, rewriting bullets, right? Trying to find people who work at the company, all those little things. It's almost like little level ups or power ups can be the thing you need to start getting interviews. But you're not going to be able to have the time or energy to do those things if you just keep applying to jobs over and over and over. All right, everyone, glad you're here. And if you haven't subscribed or followed me, make sure you do that so you can not miss the next live stream. We're going to do these more regularly. in July and beyond. So I will talk to you all very soon. Thanks for joining and have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.